Eliza's hands trembled as she stared at her phone screen. The message that had just arrived shattered everything she thought she knew. I've been watching you and your son for months. I know about the formula you can't afford. I know about the eviction notice. And I know who your son's father really is. The stranger who had been sending her money wasn't just any billionaire who'd received her misdirected text. He was her child's father, the man who had abandoned her 3 years ago without knowing she was pregnant. 3 weeks earlier, desperate and down to her last diaper, Eliza had meant to text her sister for help buying formula. Instead, she'd accidentally messaged a wrong number, pouring out her situation to a complete stranger, single mom, laid off from her nursing assistant job, facing eviction, and unable to afford formula for 6-month-old Noah. What she never expected was a response, let alone one that would change her life. Check your Venmo. Formula's on me. No strings attached. The transfer that followed, $500, was enough for formula and rent. But if this mysterious benefactor was actually Noah's father, everything about his generosity took on a sinister meaning. Had he been manipulating her all along? Eliza paced her small apartment, Noah sleeping peacefully in his crib, unaware of the storm brewing around him. She had 2 choices: confront this man and risk losing the financial lifeline that was keeping them afloat, or play along and potentially put herself and Noah in danger. The next text chimed, "Meet me tomorrow. The Grand Hotel lobby, 2 p.m. I think it's time we talked about our son." The following day, heart-pounding, Eliza pushed Noah's stroller through the revolving doors of the Grand Hotel, a place so luxurious she felt immediately out of place in her worn jeans and second-hand blouse. The lobby gleamed with marble and crystal, making her painfully aware of the vast gulf between her world and whoever had summoned her. She scanned the faces, wondering which belonged to her mysterious benefactor, and possibly Noah's father. Then she saw him, rising from a leather armchair, and the recognition hit her like a physical blow. Not Marcus, Noah's actual father who had disappeared after a brief relationship. This was Ethan Blackwood, tech billionaire whose face occasionally graced business magazines. He was a complete stranger. He'd lied about being Noah's father. But why? "I'm sorry for the deception," Ethan said once they were seated in a private corner, his voice lower and gentler than she'd imagined. "I needed to make sure you'd come." His eyes, a startling blue against his dark suit, kept drifting to Noah, who was contentedly chewing on a teething toy. "The truth is, I've been helping people anonymously for years. Wrong number texts, social media please, I choose a few each month. But yours." He paused, swallowing hard. Yours was different. Eliza clutched her purse, ready to flee. Different how? And how did you know about Noah's father? The man before her was handsome, certainly, but something in his intensity frightened her. Was this all some elaborate game to a man who had more money than he could spend? "Because 3 years ago, I lost my wife and infant son in a car accident," Ethan said, his composed facade cracking slightly. "My son would be about Noah's age now. When I got your text about needing formula, something broke open in me. I couldn't save them, but maybe I could help you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. "This isn't just about formula money. I want to offer you a job at my foundation, helping other single parents. Full benefits, flexible hours, on-site childcare. And this." He slid the paper across the table, "is the deed to a condo my company owns. It's yours if you want it." The offer was too perfect, too convenient. Eliza's nursing training had taught her to look for signs of manipulation, and every alarm bell was ringing. "Why would you do this for a complete stranger? What do you really want from us?" She pulled Noah's stroller closer, protective. Ethan's expression darkened. "I understand your suspicion. But there's something else you should know." He took a deep breath. "The accident that killed my family wasn't random. It was meant for me, retaliation from competitors who thought I'd stolen their technology. I've spent 3 years living with that guilt, hiding from the world. Your text was the first time I'd felt anything but numb. But helping you has put you on their radar too. The people who've been watching you, they work for my enemies, not me. They'll use you to get to me. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. In trying to provide for her son, had she inadvertently placed him in danger? I don't understand. Why would anyone care about your connection to us? Because I'm not just offering you a job, Ethan said, leaning forward. I'm offering you protection. My security team has already intercepted 2 attempts to access your apartment. These people will stop at nothing to hurt me, including using those I care about. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. And against all logic, Eliza, I've come to care about you and Noah very much. 6 months later, Eliza stood at the window of her new apartment, watching the sunset paint the city gold. Noah played on a plush carpet behind her, surrounded by toys she never could have afforded before. Her job at Ethan's foundation was fulfilling in ways her previous work had never been, helping mothers just like she had been, desperate and alone. But the shadow of danger still loomed. Twice now, Ethan's security team had intercepted suspicious individuals near their building. The price of her new life was constant vigilance and the growing, complicated feelings she harbored for a man who had saved them but also brought danger to their door. He's growing so fast, Ethan's voice came from the doorway where he stood with a grocery bag. He'd insisted on bringing dinner himself rather than sending an assistant. Over months of working together, their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, though neither had put words to it yet. There were too many complications, too many risks. He is, Eliza agreed, watching as Ethan set down the bag and knelt to play with Noah, who immediately crawled toward him with a delighted squeal. The sight made her heart twist. Noah had never known his biological father, but he'd bonded with Ethan in a way that both warmed and terrified her. Attachment meant vulnerability, and vulnerability was dangerous in their situation. Later that evening, after Noah was asleep, Eliza and Ethan sat on her balcony, the city lights spread before them like stars. I received another threat today, Ethan said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. They know about you. About how I feel. He turned to her, his expression grave. I think you and Noah should leave the city. I have a house in a remote location, completely off the grid. My security chief can take you there tomorrow. Run away? Again? Eliza felt anger rise unexpectedly. I've spent Noah's entire life running from one problem to another. I won't raise him in hiding. It wouldn't be forever, Ethan insisted, reaching for her hand. Just until I can resolve this situation. I'm close to proving who's behind the attacks. And then what? Eliza challenged, not pulling her hand away despite her frustration. We come back and pretend everything's normal? That we're just colleagues? That you're just Noah's benefactor and not becoming the father figure he adores? The words she'd been holding back for months finally spilled out. I can't keep living in this limbo, Ethan. Not for Noah, and not for myself. Ethan's expression softened as he moved closer. Is that what you think this is? Limbo? His hand gently touched her cheek. Eliza, meeting you and Noah was the first real thing to happen to me in 3 years. You brought me back to life. I'm not asking you to run away, I'm asking for time to make sure I can keep you both safe before I tell you that I've fallen in love with you. The confession hung in the air between them, as fragile and precious as blown glass. Before Eliza could respond, her phone rang with the special tone she'd set for the security team. Her blood ran cold as she answered. The voice on the other end was terse. Breach in the building. Get to the panic room. Now. Ethan was already moving, his training evident in his swift, controlled actions. Get Noah, he instructed, pulling a concealed panel in the wall to reveal a keypad. As Eliza rushed to Noah's room, she heard glass shatter in the living room. They weren't alone anymore. What followed was a blur of terror and adrenaline. Ethan fighting off an intruder while Eliza clutched Noah to her chest inside the panic room, watching through security monitors as the man she now knew she loved risked his life to protect them. When security finally arrived and subdued the attackers, Ethan appeared at the panic room door, bloodied but alive. The look they exchanged said everything words couldn't. They had crossed a point of no return. 1 month later, Eliza stood on the deck of Ethan's yacht, the Mediterranean stretching endlessly before her. The investigation had revealed everything. A rival tech company had orchestrated both the accident that killed Ethan's family and the recent attacks, desperate to acquire his latest innovation. With the perpetrators now facing justice, they were finally free to begin again. "Penny for your thoughts," Ethan said, joining her at the railing. Noah was napping below deck, exhausted from a morning of playing in the shallow waters of a private cove. "I was thinking about that text," Eliza said, turning to face him. "The one that started everything. One wrong number changed our entire lives." Ethan smiled, taking her hand where a diamond ring now caught the sunlight. "Some would call it fate. I call it the best mistake you ever made." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, Eliza reflected on their extraordinary journey. From desperate single mother to a woman who had found not just security but love and purpose. Their story, from an accidental text to a family forged through adversity, was a testament to how life's darkest moments could lead to unexpected light. "You know," Ethan said thoughtfully, "we should share our story someday. There are so many people out there feeling hopeless, like you were. Like I was. Maybe hearing about us would give them courage." Eliza nodded, leaning into his embrace. "I'd like that. A reminder that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and that second chances are always possible." As they stood together watching the sunset, Eliza knew their story was still being written. But the message was already clear: sometimes life's wrong turns lead exactly where you're meant to be. The first night in the panic room had been the longest of Eliza's life. Noah, sensing her fear, had cried inconsolably for hours while she watched the security monitors, witnessing the violent struggle between Ethan and the intruders. When the building's security team finally arrived, they found Ethan with a deep gash across his shoulder, standing over an unconscious attacker. The second intruder had fled, leaving behind an encrypted phone that would later prove crucial to unraveling the conspiracy. "You need a hospital," Eliza insisted once they were safely out of the panic room, Noah finally quiet in her arms. Ethan shook his head, wincing as his security chief applied pressure to his wound. "Too public. They could have people watching emergency rooms." His eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "I'm sorry, Eliza. This is my fault. I never should have brought you into my life." "Don't," she said firmly, surprising herself with her resolve. "Don't you dare apologize for saving us." She shifted Noah to her hip and reached for Ethan's uninjured hand. "We're in this together now. Whether you like it or not." Later that night, after a private doctor had stitched Ethan's wound and Noah was finally asleep in a makeshift bed, Eliza found Ethan on the balcony of the safe house they'd been moved to. A penthouse across town with security that rivaled most government buildings. "You should be resting," she said, joining him at the railing. "I keep seeing their faces," he admitted quietly. "The men who came for you. They had the same cold determination as the driver who ran my family off the road." He turned to her, his expression haunted. "I can't lose anyone else, Eliza. I can't lose you and Noah." The vulnerability in his voice broke something open inside her. Without thinking, she stepped forward and gently placed her hand on his cheek. "You won't," she promised. And when he leaned down to kiss her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, as if they'd been moving toward this moment since that first accidental text. The investigation that followed revealed layers of corporate espionage more complex than either of them had imagined. The encrypted phone led Ethan's security team to a network of operatives hired by TechVault, his main competitor. They had been responsible not only for the accident that killed his family but for systematically undermining his company for years. They wanted my quantum encryption algorithm, Ethan explained one evening as they pored over documents his team had uncovered. It's worth billions, maybe trillions, to whoever controls it. They thought killing me would delay the patent long enough for them to develop their own version. But why target me and Noah? Eliza asked, the question that had been haunting her for weeks. Ethan's expression darkened. Because they realized you were my weakness. That I cared about you both. He reached across the table, taking her hand. And they were right. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, 3 weeks after the attack. Noah had just taken his first unsteady steps, toddling from the coffee table to Eliza's outstretched arms, when Ethan's security chief burst into the safe house. "We've got him," he announced, his normally stoic expression breaking into a rare smile. Alexander Mercer, TechVault CEO. He slipped up, used a company credit card to pay one of the operatives. "We've handed everything to the FBI." That night, as they celebrated with a quiet dinner after Noah was asleep, Ethan seemed lighter than Eliza had ever seen him. "It's really over," he said wonderingly, pouring them each a glass of champagne. "For 3 years, I've been looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. And now?" "And now?" Eliza prompted when he trailed off. Ethan set down his glass, his expression suddenly serious. "Now I can finally think about the future. Our future, if you want that too." 2 days later, they boarded Ethan's private jet, destination undisclosed. Noah, delighted by his first flight, pressed his tiny hands against the window as they soared above the clouds. Eliza watched them both, still hardly believing the turn her life had taken. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked as the flight attendant served them lunch. Ethan smiled mysteriously. "Somewhere we can start fresh. Somewhere beautiful." He hesitated, then added, "I have houses all over the world, Eliza. Empty houses I've never really lived in. I'd like to make one of them a home. With you and Noah." The Mediterranean villa exceeded every expectation. Perched on a cliff overlooking turquoise waters, it was both luxurious and surprisingly homey. Bougainvillea climbed the white walls, and the open floor plan allowed the sea breeze to flow through every room. Noah immediately took to crawling across the cool tile floors, exploring his new surroundings with delighted curiosity. "This place has been empty for years," Ethan explained as he showed her around. "I bought it after the accident. Thought maybe someday it would be a place to heal." He looked at her, vulnerability clear in his eyes. "I never imagined I'd be sharing it with anyone." That evening, as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Noah sleeping peacefully in a portable crib beside them, Ethan reached for Eliza's hand. "I know this has all happened so fast," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "And I know our beginning wasn't exactly conventional. But these past months with you and Noah have been the happiest of my life." Eliza felt her heart quicken as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I'm not asking for an answer right now," he continued. "I just want you to know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, this belongs to you." Inside the box was a ring unlike any Eliza had ever seen, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught the last rays of sunlight. "It matches your eyes," she whispered, looking up at him in wonder. "Is that a yes?" Ethan asked, hope and uncertainty mingling in his expression. Eliza thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a desperate text sent to a wrong number to this moment of possibility. She thought about Noah, who deserved stability and love. And she thought about herself, the woman who had been barely surviving 3 months ago and was now being offered a chance at happiness she'd never dared imagine. "Yes," she said simply, and the smile that broke across Ethan's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Their wedding was a private affair held on the beach below the villa 2 months later. Noah, now steady on his feet, toddled down the sandy aisle carrying a small pillow with their rings, his face split in a proud grin. Eliza wore a simple white dress that caught the breeze, and Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him. "I never believed in fate," he said during his vows, his voice carrying over the gentle sound of waves. "I believed in algorithms and probability and careful planning. And then you accidentally texted me, and everything I thought I knew changed. You showed me that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never saw coming." As they settled into their new life, Eliza found herself thinking often about the strange path that had led them here. One desperate night, one wrong digit, and everything had changed. She wondered how many other lives might be transformed by such small moments of connection. "I've been thinking," she said to Ethan one evening as they watched Noah playing in the shallow water at the edge of their private beach, "about starting a foundation specifically for single parents in crisis. Not just financial help, but a complete support system, housing, childcare, job training." Ethan looked at her with pride. "I think that's a brilliant idea. What would you call it?" Eliza smiled, watching as Noah discovered a tiny shell and held it up triumphantly. "The Wrong Number Foundation," she said decisively. "Because sometimes the best help comes from the most unexpected places." As the Mediterranean sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the sand, Eliza felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. From the depths of desperation to this moment of abundance, their journey had been extraordinary. But the message at its heart was simple: hope can arrive in the most unexpected ways, and sometimes the wrong number turns out to be exactly the right one. "You know," Ethan said thoughtfully, his arm around her shoulders, "our story could help a lot of people. Not just through the foundation, but by sharing what happened to us. How a simple text message changed everything." Eliza nodded, leaning into his embrace. "I'd like that. If even one person finds hope from hearing about us, it would be worth it." As Noah ran back to them, shell in hand and joy on his face, Eliza knew that their story wasn't just about a billionaire's generosity or a desperate mother's courage. It was about connection in a disconnected world, about reaching out across the void and finding someone reaching back. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most life-changing messages arrive when we least expect them, from people we never knew we needed.